What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Zimmy here with the Digital Addiction channel, and I am bringing you another guide for more add-ons, specifically the Warlock add-ons that I recommend, AffDots and Warlock reminders. So, we're gonna try to smooth right through this and get you the necessary information you're going to need to set these up. They're very easy to set up, and I will guide you through this quickly and as simple as possible. So, I've already got the add-ons downloaded. Obviously, I've already got them set up. Obviously, if you watch my stream, you can already see them set up and in action. What we'll do is, first we are going to set up AffDots. So what you want to do with AffDots, now AffDots you are not going to find in your interface. To open up AffDots, you need to type /aff and then dots, all one word, and hit enter. Now you're going to get this box here. Now it's going to have, obviously it's going to have these things up. General, affliction, colors, layout, tidy plates, burst, profiles. Now there's a couple things that I do not mess with. Burst is one of them. I do not touch burst. This is a more advanced setting, and also you can screw it up. If you want, you can read this and you can enable it, and you can actually set current as baseline when you're in a raid, and it will give you a accurate representation of all your buffs and everything when you are in a raid. However, once you are out of raid, it will be inaccurate. The next one I do not use is tidy plates. Obviously, because I use LVUI, I do not use tidy plates, but this would allow you to integrate your dot colors in tidy plates, and you can just mess around with the settings here. So, first we are going to go to the Generals tab. Now, the first thing you want to make sure is show COE. You're going to click on it, and it's going to automatically show COE. It's going to be this little box right here. In fact, we are actually going to give you the default, which is actually vertical. This is how it's set right now, so we'll just start from there. You're going to click show COE, and you're going to get a little box here. And it's going to give you the cooldown, or the time remaining of COE on the target. Keep in mind that sometimes it does not update if you have a rogue in the raid. So obviously, for most of you, you already know that if there's a rogue in the raid, there's no point in putting COE up on the target, except on fights that have multi-targets and the rogue is not on that. Take, for example, Shekzir. Sometimes you will have the melee on one group of ads and no rogue on the other group of ads, so therefore COE is only on one set of the group, and you'll have to put COE up on the others. Now, honestly, this is pretty basic, out of the box, like ready to go. You can change things here: target frame size, focus frame size, text size, and COE HP text size. I leave these by default. There's really no need for them. You can also change the font to any font that you want. I have it set to nothing. In fact, we'll set it up because I like everything all together. I'm going to go to LVUI Pixel, and it's going to show you. It's for the numbers, obviously. You can also change the color of the text. I don't bother with that. If you're having a hard time seeing the numbers, then you can change the color of the text to whatever color you want. And then leave relative values checked. Now we're going to go into affliction. Affliction set, you want to have this enabled, and then you want to have show haunt enabled. And now here you're going to see agony, corruption, UA, and haunt. Now these numbers represent the placement of where they're going to be at. 1 is the top one, 2 is the middle one, 3 is the bottom middle one, and 4 is the bottom. This is how it's set up by default, if I'm not mistaken, so I leave it by default. Pretty easy. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next you have colors. Now this is where it sometimes gets a little confusing, and honestly I actually started changing the colors because there's things that I personally, it's set to a personal preference. These colors each represent something different. current stats are better, full pandemic benefit. What this basically states is if this box is highlighted, if any of these boxes are highlighted into a green color, this color here, it is stating that the current stats that it's showing are going to be better than your dots that are on. And then a full pandemic benefit. Full pandemic benefit, as you know, pandemic allows us to refresh our dots and make them additive. So if they are below 50% of their remaining time, you will be able to refresh their dots and have an extra time allotted to the dots. Next is current stats are the same. In other words, if you were to refresh the dots right then and there, the stats aren't going to change, so the dots are going to do the same amount of damage. And full pandemic benefit. Current stats are worse, which basically means if you were to refresh your dots, then they would be worse, they would do less damage. And then a full pandemic benefit. And then you got it again, but this time partial pandemic benefit. Now, what I like to do, or what I did, is I set the colors up to stuff where I would understand if I were to refresh these, this is a good thing, or it doesn't matter. So I have green stats, this green here, as this is good to go, in other words. So they are better, and I'm going to refresh these dots as soon as I see them. And then blue is going to say that they're also better. Partial pandemic benefit. Now this tells me, these color coordinates tell me that I should refresh my dots. Because as long as your dots are doing more damage, you should always refresh your dots. Then you also have yellow, which is they're the same, so obviously I'm not going to refresh them unless they are about to fall off, or for instance if my trinkets are about to fall off. And then I also have current stats are worse as a maroonish purple and then a red. So both of them kind of look the same, and I am going to not refresh them unless I absolutely have to. Then you also have this color green, which means the same. Normally I actually keep it yellow, but I'm going to leave it there for now. I believe this is actually possibly the default settings. Since there's been a few updates, they haven't, I think they reset in the settings. But this is basically what the colors mean. And once you've realized what the colors mean and when to refresh your dots properly, you will be able to fully benefit from this add-on. Now you also have layout. As you saw originally when I first started, I have mine as horizontal. I like kind of keep mine in a whole horizontal configuration on my entire UI. And then you can also change the icon size and the positions, the height and the width of the entire thing, and the text positions if you like. That pretty much wraps it up for the add-on AffDots. One thing, you can also have it set to bars here if that is something you would rather prefer. I don't actually like bars, I like the bigger pictures. It's just an easy reference for me. Now, to show you something, when you put a dot, you'll see 100%. 100. So that means it is going to do 100, it's going to basically do the same damage. This is a number reference. Now as you see, my trinkets are proccing and the number's actually going higher. This means my dots are going to do 19% more damage, now 12% more damage, than what they would have done if I just left the dot. So obviously I'm going to refresh the dot. And you can also do that, it'll happen with all your add-ons. As you can see, UA, my trinkets proc, now it's like 121, 122 for UA and corruption. And I'm going to refresh those, and then Agony is 108, which means it's going to do 8% more damage total. And then if you see them below 100%, then that means that they're going to do less damage. Wait for this trinket to proc, or come off. There you go. Now it's going to do 12% less damage than what it would have done if I were to refresh them. Pretty simple. Pretty easy to understand once you fully comprehend what this add-on does. Now let's go into the next add-on. It's called Warlock Reminders. Now this one will be actually in your interface. So if you just go to add-ons and then you go to Warlock Reminders, you're going to get this little thing. Now as you see on my screen, you see these here and this here. This is all part of Warlock reminders. Even the trinket procs are from Warlock reminders, which I'll show you how to get that done. Now, if you're just playing Affliction, I'm going to maximize all these and show you what it up. You have Reminder, Combat Reminder, Cooldown Reminder, and Custom Reminder. Now, let's talk about Custom Reminder real quick. Custom Reminder is basically any extra things you want to track that have something to do with your Warlock. Basically Trinket procs and your Jade Spirit proc, or even Windsong proc. You're going to go into frame setup, and we'll do this with all of them. So actually first I'm going to go to spell setup. Spell setup is going to give this here. As you can tell, I have certain things that are already tracking, like Dark Soul Misery, Blessing of the Celestials, which is one of my trinkets, Life Blood, and Intellect, and Quickened Tongues. Now, to add a trinket proc or even a weapon proc, what you're going to do is you're going to go to wowhead.com, and then you are going to search the buff that it gives you. To figure out what buff a trinket gives you or something, it's pretty easy. Just hit a dummy for a second, look up here, and as you can see, Jade Spirit, that would be from my weapon enchant, and then here you see Blessing of the Celestials, which is from my Relic of Yulon trinket. So, you just hover over it, see what the buff is, go to Wowhead and search that buff. Once you've searched that buff, it's going to give you a spell ID in the URL. It'll say like spell ID equals and then a number. Copy that number, and then you're going to post it in here into add spell, and then you're going to hit, there's going to be an OK button here. Then you hit OK, and it's going to add it to the list. Once you've added it to the list, it's going to end up showing no matter what. Now, first thing what I like to do is make sure that all of my bars are set up perfectly where I want them before I really get into detail of any kind of add-on. Position is always key. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your first thing, and we're going to start on reminders. You're going to click config mode. Once you click config mode, you can actually cancel out of that. And now it's going to show you where everything is at. As you can tell, I have a lot of buttons that it's tracking. They won't all appear if you have certain abilities or you don't have certain abilities. For instance, here this add-on, this part of the add-on is going to track my soul shards, my molten fury, my molten core procs if I'm demo, my nightfall procs, and then also my drain soul when I hit 20%. Now here, as you see over here, you have my food buff, you have flasks, you have pet, you have dark intent, and you have soul link. Now if I don't have the ability soul link spec'd into, it's not going to appear. If I have my food buff or my flask, those are not going to appear. These are only going to appear if you do not have them. Now keep in mind, dark intent is going to, if you're in a raid, and say you're in a 25-man raid, and you run a 30-man roster, this is always going to appear because it's going to say that 5 people are missing dark intent. And that means that basically it's counting the 5 people that are sitting out. Now this is the default image, but it is going to give you a different image. We'll go into it later, depending on what pet you use. But this is the default image of a pet. And if I don't have my pet summoned, for instance, it's going to show a picture of whatever pet I'm supposed to have. And then if I say I'm using Grimoire of Sacrifice, then it's going to actually show a little book and saying that I don't have my pet stacked. Now, once you have, now these two bars here real quick, this bar is for combat, okay, and this bar here is their custom reminders. You're going to have 4 bars total, 1, 2, 3, 4. And once you have these all set in place, you're going to go back into interface. And then reminders, this is the first one, and this is this bar here. It's going to ask you, what do you want tracked? Now, as you can see, I have Dark Intent tracked, I have Grimoire of Sacrifice tracked, I have Flask tracked, Pet tracked, Well Fed tracked, and if I wanted Soul Link, then Soul Link would be tracked. Once you have what you want checked, obviously you want to make sure that it is in the right spot. You're then going to go down here and it's going to say, okay, what pet do you use for each spec? And you have a little drop down box, and it's going to give you all the pets you can use. Now remember, it does the old school pets, so if you're using Grimoire of Supremacy, it's not actually going to show these, so you need to find the equivalent. For instance, Affliction, I have Fell Hunter checked, but because I use Grimoire of Supremacy, it would actually be an Observer, but Observer counts towards the Fell Hunter, and it'll actually show a picture of the Observer. For Demonology, I use a Felguard, so I'm going to have Felguard checked. And for Destruction, you would use an Imp. Technically, if you're Destruction, you're probably going to use Grimoire of Sacrifice, so you'll probably use a Voidwalker, so you may want to check Voidwalker. Now, I have this button unchecked, Scan Party / Raid, while in combat. I don't bother with that because that's just extra memory it's going to use, and you really don't want to do that if you don't have to. Now let's go back into the frame setup. We're still into config mode, and we're going to have a few things here. We're going to have frame alpha, which basically is going to state how transparent it is or not. Then you're going to have frame size. I like to keep mine, most of these, at 50, because I like them pretty big. So they're kind of up in my face. I also have them at 100%, which means that it's going to be opaque and you can't see through it. Now you also have this thing called expand. Expand right and expand down. Now expand down is going to change to where it goes up vertically instead of horizontally. And then you can also choose the font that you want. I have right now LVI font. I'm going to switch to LVI pixel just to keep it. And then you can also pick the font size. Now once you've done that, you may not see the settings change. And you may have to reload UI, but I recommend, unless you want to spend a lot of time reloading, that you do everything to start and then reload UI and then make the small adjustments you need. Now we're going to go into combat reminders. Now combat reminders is, we're going to go in here into the spell, and that was this bar right here. As you can see, it's kind of back there. But this is going to give you different abilities that you can track. So, as I told you, I already have Shadow Trance track. You want to make sure that's enabled if you're Affliction. And then you can track Shadow Burn, Backdraft, Drain Soul, and at Drain Soul you can even check it to a certain percentage that you want it at. If you want, you can have it at 100%, so it'll always show. Conflagrate, Molten Core, Soul Shards, Demonic Fury, and Burning Embers. As you can tell, I don't have Burning Embers or Demonic Fury checked, but I do have Soul Shards checked. It's because I play Affliction more, so I like the redundancy. If you're using LVUI, though, it's going to track up here right above your player frame. Now, once I have all those checked, you can even set out a different sound if you want. So, for instance, at 20%, I'm going to hear a quad damage go off. I'll play it for you. That's going to go off at 20%, and it's going to be a gigantic red flag telling me when I need to drain soul. And then you can also have different sounds for everything, pretty much everything. And once you've got that set up, then once again you're going to go into frame setup. You're going to change the alpha, the font size, etc. Now because I have this towards the middle of my screen, I actually have the frame size smaller, so I have it set to 40. I want it slightly smaller, just so it's not completely in the way. And then obviously you can have show time left checked, and that's going to tell you, for instance, a proc. It's going to give you the amount of time left on that proc. It's really good for Molten Core. Molten Core. Because you want to know how long you can spam your Soulfire, etc. Like how long your Soulfire procs are going to last. Next, we're going to go into cooldown reminder. Now, cooldown reminder is something that's going to track whether or not your cooldowns are off cooldown. Okay, so as you see, you go into spell setup, and it's got a bunch of abilities. A lot of them, I believe, are unnecessary because you should be popping them at all times, or you're going to only pop them at certain times where, like when big damage hits or something like that. And there's some useless things, like, in my opinion, Demonic Circle Teleport, I don't believe needs to be tracked at all, but you can have it tracked if you want. So, I have Dark Soul Misery checked, and Dark Soul Knowledge checked, and that's because I play both Demo and Affliction. Now, if I'm a Demo, Dark Soul Misery is not going to show, and only Dark Soul Knowledge is going to show, and if I'm playing Affliction, it's going to be vice versa. You also have Grimoire of Sacrifice, or Service, which I have checked for Demo, Imp Swarm, and Mortal Coil. Now, Mortal Coil I have checked because I want to know when it's off cooldown, because I tend to not know when it's off cooldown. So I have that checked. But once again, you can have other things checked. Dark Regeneration, Howl of Terror if you PvP, Demonic Leap if you want, Soul Shatter, Havoc, Grimoire of Sacrifice, Twilight Ward, Unending Resolve, Carrion Swarm, pretty much everything you want. You can even track your Doom Guards, but honestly, like in my opinion, why track a Doom Guard? It's on a 10-minute cooldown. More than likely, you can only use it once per fight, sometimes twice. Now, once you have that set up, now you're going to go back into alpha, or back into a frame setup, and you're going to mess with the alpha, the frame size. Now, here's this little thing called fade out on cooldown. It's going to ask you, do you want to fade out the ability when it's on cooldown? I have it, yes, I have it set to 50%. I believe that's the normal one. And it's going to fade out at 50%. You also have the font and the font size. Now once you have that set up, we're going to go back into custom reminders, and once again, it's one of those things where, you know, it's only going to be what you want to track. Once again, frame size, frame alpha, expand right or down. If you want to have a sound playing, you can add the sound playing. I have it set to clear casting because it's really not that loud and I really don't need it. I use it for more of a visual interpretation. And then font size and show time left. Now, show time left is definitely key for these because it's going to show how much time you have left on that ability, like if it's procced. So, for instance, if my trinket were to proc, it's going to tell me that, you know, say it's Essence of Terror. Well, that means there's going to be 20 seconds on it. So it's going to give me a timer of 20 seconds, and that's going to count down. And that is it. Once you have that all set up, you want to make sure you hit the lock frame. If it's for some reason not fully set up, you want to hit Reload UI, and it's going to show everything that you need. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial on Warlock add-ons, and if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. I'm always coming out with new videos, and you can also check me out live at twitch.tv/digitaladdiction.